What is up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Q&A, the show where I take your questions from YouTube and Twitter and answer them here in video format on this show. And we're going to jump right into it today with the question from Twitter. And this question comes from Shanes Brown, who says, "Hey, Quincy, do you think Carl Joseph will be the long-term strong safety if he stays healthy?" Probably not. It's possible that he has a decent year and you can get him on a modest long-term deal. Um, it's also possible that he can ball out and price himself out of the Cleveland market because the Browns aren't going to be in the market to pay his safety a ton of money. I think he's a holdover until you can find a solution and focus on finding a solution next season, whether that be in the veteran free agent market again, whether that be in the draft. He's kind of a band-aid to get you over for a year. And maybe he might be able to get a modest extension if he does have a good year, but not a great year. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with Carl Joseph because I think there's a ton of potential there. I just don't know where that spectrum lies, where his potential starts to kind of price him out of Cleveland because the Browns, they got to give Myles Garrett his money coming soon. Baker Mayfield's probably coming up after that. Denzel Ward. A lot of guys are going to need their money, so not a lot of room to give somebody next year a long-term deal with good money. This next question comes from the NZ Takeover, who says, "What happens if we go 500?" Now, there are two theories that I will put out there. One theory is what I think should happen based on everything that's happened in the offseason. And then the other theory is what I think will happen. Now, what I think should happen is that nothing should happen. They should bring back everybody and just keep some continuity for continuity's sake. At this point, it doesn't look like it's going to be dysfunctional. If they're just 500, just keep some continuity there because it can't help to keep pressing you would have effectively pressed the reset button through your entire window here while Baker's on his rookie deal. So no, I'm not in favor of firing anybody. But how I think this might play out could be interesting because John D. Podesta is also in the last year of his deal. If this doesn't look like a great decision, immediately you can see him walking away. If he walks away, then the guy who brought in Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski is not going to be there. Maybe Jimmy Haslam brings in somebody else to fill that role, knowing Jimmy Haslam is going to be somebody completely unrelated to D. Podesta, who's going to want their own general manager and their own coach. So best case scenario, a dysfunctional a second year for Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry. Worst case scenario, they just get fired outright. So that's what I fear is going to happen based on my knowledge of how the Haslams have run the Browns for the last 7+ years. I hope they don't go in that direction. I hope they continue this continuity. But if the results aren't amazing to start, it could get messy. The next question comes from Alex Wright, who says, "Baker MVP, Delpit Defensive Rookie of the Year chances, and do you think Myles Garrett will bounce back?" Of course Myles Garrett's going to bounce back. It's not like he got injured. He just got suspended. And before he got suspended, he was one of the best defensive players in the NFL. So no reason to expect why he shouldn't be. I don't think the suspension honestly should help make him healthier because he got lingering issues his entire career. Delpit Defensive Rookie of the Year. It's kind of hard for a safety to win that. He would have to have like a monster year. Normally it goes to pass rushers, and Chase Young is also in this draft, so it's going to be a tall order for him. And then Baker MVP, nah, dude, not even going to do it this year. I'm not going to do the Baker Mayfield MVP thing like I did. Nah, I'm not. I'm staying away from that. I'm good. No Baker MVP talk. Let's just win some games, go to the playoffs, and see what happens after that. I'm not doing it this year. But thank you for the question, Alex. This next question is from YouTube and is from Mike Wack 67, who says, "Do you think it's possible for the Browns to sign both Clay Matthews III and Jadeveon Clowney, given the amount of cap space the Browns still have?" Yeah, is it possible? Of course it is. Is it plausible? Not really. Clay Matthews might make sense because he might want a short-term deal. Jadeveon Clowney might even want a short-term deal. But bring in both those guys on a one-year deal, it's just, I don't know. It kind of tips the scales for me for amount of people that you're going to bring in for a 1 year prove it. And it's not even a prove it for Jadeveon Clowney. It's a mercenary contract, essentially. And, you know, I'm wary of that. Bring in guys who are going to only be here for a year. How committed is somebody whose contract only is a year going to be to this system, to being able to make the changes that they need to? How bought in can somebody be? And if you have, you know, 4 or 5 guys who are like that, that's fine. If you have 7, 8, 9, 10, then you start to get into questionable territories on what are you encouraging in the locker room and what might create a bad dynamic. So bring in both of them on those kind of shorter term deals, which are going to have to be, because again, Myles Garrett's probably going to make $25-26 million a year pretty soon here. That means to me that you could probably only bring in one of those guys, and the one guy I would spend the resources on is Jadeveon Clowney. So that's kind of how it works out with me. Yeah, it's possible. If we were playing Madden, yeah, I would do it. But since this isn't Madden, there's a lot of dynamics that you have to account for. I just think it'd be a little bit more risky than people think it would to bring them both in. This next question comes from Pangas7. It says, hey, Q, assuming the whole season games will be placed without fans, how much damage or not will that do to the Browns? Imagine playing at Pittsburgh against the Dallas Cowboys without fans. Now, a lot of you might not know this, but I was a season ticket holder last year for that wonderful season that the Browns had. And the one thing I didn't notice was that this team's so young that the home environment sometimes I didn't feel like was healthy for them. And what I mean by that is that, you know, Browns fans have seen a lot, and they tend to, I don't want to say panic, but you know what I mean, right? We tend to fall back into here we go again, and, you know, we're the bad Browns, and we roll back into that identity really easy. And I'm not saying this is all Browns fans, but a lot of Browns fans who buy season tickets, who go to the games, they do this. It's really prevalent in the stadium. So something as small as like a missed extra point, it changes the entire psyche and the energy in the stadium. And it just kind of avalanches down from the rafters in the stands onto the field, and it kind of creates this dysfunctional environment. So I actually think not having fans for this team with all these expectations would probably be good for them, because they just haven't done well with that dynamic of the Cleveland crowd. And it's a very different dynamic because the history's there. The scars are real. These fans aren't like this for no reason. They've seen a lot. It's just, since they've seen a lot, and since there's a lot of them there and they're passionate, it does give this team an extra burden that they have to deal with when they're at home that they don't want to deal with. And on the road, yeah, sure, Pittsburgh without fans, it's going to be much easier. I mean, like Dallas without fans, I don't know how vicious of a home environment Dallas is, but, you know, if you think about the worst home environments you have to go to, they're a lot less daunting and a lot less different without fans there. This isn't like baseball where the dimensions are different. You know, it's going to be the same football field with the same empty seats, you know. So, yeah, if there's no fans in these games coming up, I actually think this would benefit the Browns. Not that I want that to happen, because I want football to be as close to normal as it's healthy to be. But if there aren't no fans, I actually do I think that would help the Browns. Honest to God. Next question comes from Big Hurt, who says, do you believe Alex Van Pelt will really fix Baker's foot mechanics? And do you think this will make a big enough difference to take Baker to the next level? Let's be very clear here. Alex Van Pelt, nor Baker Mayfield, nor anybody should try to go in and fix Baker's foot mechanics. I know that this stems from a couple of film breakdowns, and they're actually really good, of Baker Mayfield and his mechanics, right? Because they say he takes the punch step to get a kind of extra depth in the pocket, and that causes some of the protection issues with him. But the second part most people who break that down say is you don't want to change that. That's not what you want to change, because since Baker Mayfield's shorter, he does need to take that extra step. It's more or less the system around him that needs to change to account for that. That's what they're doing right now. So I don't think that's necessary. I don't think his mechanics have to change. And at this point, it's dangerous to change a quarterback's mechanics with their feet. This is how you ruin a guy. So no, don't fix his feet mechanics. Build around that. Build protections that are around that. That's why Jedrick Wills was such a great pick there, because he has great feet, so he can get more depth on his pass rushes. That's why you invested so much money in both the edge tackle positions, right tackle and left tackle. It's because Baker Mayfield, and the way he does his step, is going to leave him vulnerable off the edges. So you're going to need the best offensive lineman off the edges, but it does protect the guys inside. So your center, your left and right guard in the passing game, not as important for Baker Mayfield as having really good tackles. And that's why the Browns invested in hopefully having really good tackles, because they know that that's what they're building around, which is Baker Mayfield and his mechanics. He takes that extra step. He is shorter, so he needs to get extra depth. So I wouldn't fix his mechanics. I would just say that it's positive that how they're building this offensive line around him. They would have spent a ton of money on a guard to put in front of Baker Mayfield. Then we would be worried about other things with this team, because they're not building around Baker Mayfield. But since they got the tackles, that kind of tells me that they're building around those flaws, and hopefully creating a system and some protections that are actually going to help Baker Mayfield going forward. This next question comes from Wally Ahmed, who says, "Hey, Quincy, how long do you think it will take the Browns before they start playing good football this year, since there's no offseason workouts?" All right, so the take that, hey, they have a new head coach, so they're going to start off slow, and that's just the end and be all of it, is that everybody else isn't changing their head coach, but the Browns are, so they're going to start off slow by default. And just using that as a unilateral, universal rule, it's kind of a lazy take, in my opinion, that I've seen a lot of people use, because I think you need to evaluate what the changes are going to be to the system, who you're bringing in, and what that reason is for, to understand if that's going to be a fast change or a very complicated change. A change I think people don't think is complicated right now, it's going to be extremely complicated, is Tom Brady playing for Bruce Arians. That is not a real made in heaven kind of match there, if you look at offensive system and what Tom Brady brings to the table at his current age. That's something that's going to start off slow. I don't care how much Tom Brady works in the offseason. That kind of space between the player and the system and that fit is going to be something that's going to take a long time to merge together. That's what's going to be hurt by this whole situation that we got going on. The Browns moving to an offense that fits them better and is simpler, I don't think is necessarily going to be the type of offense that's going to cause you to be super slow out the gate, or more slow than everybody else is going to be out the gate, given that they're dealing with the same circumstances too. I think a team like Baltimore, that's going to have the same head coach, but they're clearly looking to expand the offensive side of the game to add more stuff to the passing game and make their offense more complicated. It's going to have more problems coming out the gate than a team like Cleveland, who's pretty much going to be hey, we're going to line up two tight ends, run the ball, play action, throw it to Jarvis, throw it to Odell. It's very simple. Jarvis and Odell both played in a very similar system like this in LSU. Just look at 2018 when Freddie Kitchens took over, right? It didn't take the team a long time to adjust to Freddie Kitchens, because Freddie Kitchens was taking this overcomplicated mess and simplifying it into, a run-heavy, play-action, pass offense. And then in 2019, Freddie Kitchens took that simplified offense that worked and added a million pieces to it and made it more complex, and the team started off slow and never got their momentum. So if you look at the Browns and how they're going to start off, I know they have a new head coach. I know it's a new system, but it's a simplified system, and it's actually going back to what they had success with in 2018. So it's not new to everybody on the roster, just a select few people. And it's simplifying the complex thing that they're coming from. So I don't think they're going to have a ton of problems coming out the gate. I actually think they're going to be able to benefit from all of this if they can be competent, because they should be able to start off fast, because let's face it, they're NFL football players. How long should it take them to learn how to block for Nick Chubb on a zone run? It's not a difficult conversion to make. So I disagree with all the takes coming out that you have to expect this team to start off slow. One, because they're playing Baltimore, a team that the Browns have been decent against in the last few years in a Baker Mayfield era. And also this idea that they're going to start off slow just because they have a new coach. Sure, that's true sometimes in some situations, but not all the times. And I just push back against people who lazily use that as kind of like, oh, well, it's a new coach, so it has to start off slow. That's not the case. And I don't think that's going to be the case this year. I think this team is going to actually be able to move fast. The next question comes from Giants Nation, who says, what's up, Quincy? Hoping you have a nice day. I was watching ESPN clips, and I remember the Browns were trying to get Jimmy G from the Patriots. My question was, at the time, were you for that or no? And looking back, are you glad you didn't get him? At the time, was I for that? Yeah, I'm not going to be afraid to admit it here. I like Jimmy G coming out of college. I watched him at Eastern Illinois. You know, he was an FCS guy. I went to an FCS school, so I was pretty aware of the FCS scene at the time. I like Jimmy Garoppolo coming out. I believe Urban Meyer even said some nice things about him coming out of college. And I thought he would be a pretty good quarterback coming out of the second round for New England. And when he hit the market, yeah, I was interested. I wanted the Browns to get him because currently our quarterback was Deshaun Kaiser, who was awful. But yeah, so at the time, I wanted him. Now, knowing what I know now, is that the option I would choose to go? No, I wouldn't want to do that. I would much prefer Baker Mayfield, or if we're really going to play the alternate choice game, Carson Wentz or even Deshaun Watson. Like all three of those guys are much better, in my opinion, than what Jimmy Garoppolo's turned out to be. And I think he has been a disappointment. He's also been injury prone a lot, which nobody thought that was going to be the case until he started playing in New England. And the next question is from Nathaniel Carroll, who says, over or under 30 touchdown passes for Baker Mayfield? I would go over on that. And that's the last question of the day. Thank you guys for asking. And again, guys, don't forget to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, ding that notification bell so you can be notified when I upload. But again, guys, thank you for watching. Have a great day. Have a good night.